Hey guys, Tim here. I just came back from taking the 2021 June ACT, and I'm just here to give my thoughts and opinions on the test, as well as give you some advice on how to study for it, and some things that I did that you could implement into how you study for it if your ACTs in the future. So my opinions on the ACT is that it's easier than the SAT, but a lot more strict on time, which is annoying. I'd rather have more time to work out more difficult questions than have a plethora of easy questions and be like, oh shoot, there's not enough time for this. But I will say that I felt like that initially, but with a lot of time to practice, I was able to keep up pretty proficiently and was pretty happy with it overall. So let me just give my opinions on like this specific test. So, um, as for the June test was actually a repeat of another test that happened in 2018. I don't know if because of coronavirus, the ACT stopped producing tests or whatnot. I know the SAT is still making original tests, but there's something weird with that. But whatever. I haven't seen the exact form, so I've never seen those questions before, but it was still pretty fun. The out of all the questions, I mean the sections, I would argue, and I've seen other people's opinions as well, that the math section was the hardest of all of them. Just considering that the type of questions that I saw in there weren't really indicative of what I saw on practice tests. So with that, by saying like all the other questions were pretty considerably easy, but the math was a bit harder. Let me just get into how I studied for this. So I used the official ACT prep guide, and I did like there's like five prep. There were like five practice, like physical practice things in here. There was one online, but the thing I found with um, studying for tests in general is that I'm a very avid book studier. On the computer, I feel I'm not connected as much, and I feel that I perform a lot better on pencil and paper because it's like literally in my hands. I don't know, that's just the thing that's up with me, but I highly recommend studying with books. And the good thing about this is that it explains every single problem and why all the other questions are wrong and why this specific question is good. So I would say that this is purely for practice. However, there was a second option, which had test strategies and review. I wouldn't buy this if your ACT is coming up within like the next month. This is more for generally people starting up, like when the test is still 4 months away and people are starting out to study. And this has a lot of good advice, but once you've been taking the ACT a couple of times, or at least a couple of practice questions, this isn't really necessary for your studying. Overall, I say that the best way to study is to use a real timer. Pull out your timer, whatever you have available to you, and just practice these things timed. As I said, the ACT in general, like it's a lot harder than the SAT in terms of time, and like that's one of the craziest things. Even though, in general, the questions are not that difficult. So so let's say you have a week before the test and you only want to grind one section of the exam. I would tell you to grind out the science section. I've seen a lot of smart students, especially like those on Reddit, my friends personally. I know someone who told me in real life, they're like, yo, all the test was really easy, but then I got to that science section and I'm like, oh, I don't feel too good about that, man. He did pretty well overall, but it's obviously disappointing to go into the test feeling good and then hit that last section and be like, oh, come on, science is such a scam. So the thing is, like, I think practice pays off the most for science because you're getting that rhythm and feeling for what you really need to look for. This goes with a lot of tests, but I feel like once you know what to look for, the entire section in general becomes easier. The thing is, with things such as math and grammar, although practicing those under timed is highly recommended and beneficial to you as a test taker, it's not going to help you as much as taking timed practice science sections would because it's showing you what to look for. But when with grammar, it's just recall. So if you're on a time crunch, practice your science section. You'll feel a lot happier. I did a lot of science practice, and I was like kind of smiling because it felt good to finish with like 2 minutes left, and I knew I got everything right. So That's what I'd say on that. So let's just start from the beginning. We've talked about science. I'm going to move on to grammar. One of the things I'd recommend is that you should like go online and look up grammar rules. Like one of the most like annoying things is that it's like the comma should go after the s, before the s, like know those basic things. Because generally grammar makes sense. Like they're gonna ask like one like spelling question that's easy. They're gonna ask like a couple of overall passage questions with enough practice. Like that's also fine. Just the annoying things that will get you on grammar is like that specific things that you'll have to know and like adjusting pronouns and whatnot. So I think overall the grammar section is the easiest, so you can worry about it the least. Next, we can move on to math. And I've seen a lot of people who are like, okay, they ask the most questions on math, just straight up. And the thing about math is that this nice little sheet that you get on the SAT, no, you don't you don't get that on the ACT. I had nothing, and you have to recall most of it. On my test, I had to recall area of the circle. I had to recall the right triangle ratios. Special right triangle ratios. I had to recall volume, but I don't think that would have been for everyone. Volume of the cube is pretty easy, and these are obviously these formulas aren't a pain to memorize, especially because we've been working since like middle school. The thing is, the fact that you don't have it is kind of nerve wracking. So there's that. Another thing I'd also recommend you memorizing is trigonometric ratios, and those are the things like, oh yeah, like pi over 6. Like what is that? It's like 30 degrees. What is it? And also like you should know that, oh yeah, sine 30 is what? Sine 30 is 1/2. Okay, cool. Like those things, because it's just good to know in general. And even though it might like take up for 1 or 2 questions on the math section, if you come across a math section, like math problem that you legit don't know, those questions are really gonna like come and back you up. So what I'd say is that math, just keep asking for help. If you literally don't know how to solve it, don't move, don't budge, don't have lunch until you know how to solve it. And like, even if you can't reproduce it, the fact that you know how to solve that specific question in that scenario will really give you like background help to answer a lot of other questions. So video's getting kind of long, so I'll try to hurry it up. With the reading section, it's a lot like the SAT reading section. And the thing is that there's 4 passages here. So even though you only have 35 minutes, I wouldn't worry too much because it's not that bad overall. The thing is, a lot of like professionals say, oh yeah, you can annotate. So what you can do is have like a little thing to the side and write out the basis of every single paragraph. But the thing is, if you can read a bit fast and read it like a story, you'll be pretty fine. And actually, what I recommend is that you don't really need to read the text thoroughly. I would still read the text, but I wouldn't worry about getting like, oh, what? I mean, you kind of need to know chronological events, but I wouldn't really focus on the fine details. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but don't skim it, but you don't have to delve deep into the text because the questions are the most important part. And yeah, the 35-minute time crunch is going to screw you over if you try to like annotate every single paragraph when you don't really need to. So chronological events are important. When you see a questions and you legit don't know, that's going to be like most of the time. Go back to the text. You have time to go back to the text and find it. And especially if you read it, you'll know where that kind of area is. You can just go over the paragraph once more and find the answer. It's not that bad because I know like for every single reading question, you're going to find the answer back in the text. And we probably talked about the science questions, so the science section. So yeah. So would I take if I was a new student, would I take the ACT or would I grind the SAT? I don't really know. It's a lot. It's a hard question because there's a lot of personal preference involved. I find more value in the SAT because I see it as harder, as more difficult. The thing about ACT is that although the time crunch is there, practicing science section under a 35-minute crunch, maybe for like 3 times, that's going to really improve the way you look at the science section. And I know for a fact a lot of people straight up just don't do this. They don't take the effort to take time to practice. Like I wouldn't say take a time to think of the entire test because no one really has the motivation to do that. I would say just take sit down for an hour, and then I can take two practice timed science sections or one timed what's this math section, and just do it like twice a week or something. And that's actually really good practice because timed doing things timed is the best way overall. So with that, that's the end of the video. I hope you'll subscribe because this channel is kind of popping off. I'm just kind of posting random stuff here. But hopefully this helped you. I'm genuinely concerned that you do well and that you'll be able to benefit from this video. I'll be around in the comments if you have any questions for me, and feel free to check out my other stuff. I plan to do more AP test review videos in the future. But thank you for making it all the way through, and I'll see you around. Bye.